Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and this is part one of our top 100 board games of all time. And we are going to be counting them down from 100 to 91.
And it was really hard to narrow it down to 100. I think it was easy enough to get it down to maybe 150, but then that final bit I found really difficult.
Yeah, my 100, just in the last 5 minutes, I feel like changed 3 times. I wish so much that we were allowed to do honorable mentions, but we said no, we're doing a hard 100. And just to put this into context, we played thousands of games. We own 300-ish, which is all you can fit in a London flat. So this is the best of the best of the best.
And this time, we haven't seen each other's list at all. There's been no sneak peeks, no looking at it. So I'm interested to see what you have on yours.
Yeah, we always cheat a little bit. This year, no cheating whatsoever. It is all a surprise. So, and I really am going to be excited if we get a crossover. It feels, I don't know, I feel like we'll get at least one over the course of the whole thing.
Maybe.
I'm gonna say 4.
Exact crossovers?
4 exact crossovers.
I'm going to say 2.
All right, well, we'll see. And let's start off and see 100.
My number 100 is It's a Wonderful World. And this is a great looking box, first of all. I love the box. Mm-hmm. And it's a fun game with card drafting, which is one of the elements I really enjoy. And then you are building out a tableau, but you have to choose for the cards you draft, whether you discard them for a cube or you put them out and then you have to try and fulfill them. And so you put various cubes on them and then they form part of the engine. And so the pacing of the game really ramps up, where by the last round, you're producing so many cubes and you're almost really hoping that you've drafted some high scoring point cards earlier on that you're now able to use all those cubes for. So I like the mix of really deciding what to use to build your engine and what to set yourself up for the future.
Yeah, this one just missed my list, but I really like this one too. I think we just played it less this year because we got the campaign expansion. And so we played that a lot at the beginning of last year, and then it just kind of fell off, so it just fell out of my head a little bit. But yeah, it's great. It's a great game, and the art is really cool.
And it has fallen down my list a little bit, but I think we just need to play it more. Mm-hmm. So I do want to play it more this coming year and see where it ends up. And that is my number 100.
My number 100 is The Quacks of Quedlinburg. And like I said, I really, this was so painful for me to make this choice. In the end, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go with a stone cold classic, a game that I am always happy to play and that I can always introduce to new players too, because it's just plain fun. It's just fun and silliness. You're pulling ingredients out of a bag, you're putting them into a pot. Some of them make your pot explode, some of them help you get points. And then each round you're buying new ingredients, you're putting into that bag, you're putting them into the pot. And there's a lot of randomness, there's a lot of goofiness, there is some skill and some engine building, but it's kind of a nice balance of both, especially for a gateway game. I just really like it. And I like it more that we got all the expansions, and I was like, I was feeling a little much. And then we kind of rewound it back a little bit. And that kind of hit the sweet spot for me again. I think the Witches expansion and the base game, that's the perfect mix for me.
That is what I was going to say, is with the Witches, it is just right. And we use the other side of the board as well, because the base game comes with 2 sides. And so for us, that is the sweet spot. And it is great. It is nice that you can play it with experienced players who want something light and fun, and for brand new players too.
And that is my number 100.
My number 99 is Zuli. And this is another drafting game, but in this you are drafting animals and you're drafting habitats. And so this is from an independent UK publisher designer, and we saw it at UKGE the year before last, and it was a huge hit there. And so we immediately picked it up, and we play so many games, and it's really simple. It plays very quickly, but we love it. It's just really fun to make sure you get the right habitats and then have all of your friendly animals together in the same habitat, or put a nice well-fed card therein, so you have a predator and a prey, but you kind of hope they don't get eaten.
It says well-fed on the card.
It does say well-fed, so it's implied it gets eaten, but it never actually goes away.
Yeah.
And this is one that, if we're not too sure what to play, it's frequently one we go to.
Yeah, I wondered how long it would take till you said one that I was like, oh, and it took two. Because, we played this last night. We play this so often, and I really like it. The art, I think, is such a tripping point for people because they think it's going to be such a, kid game. And it works for kids, but it's totally not. This is totally a solid, quick-paced game for adults. And yeah, I love a solid drafting game, and it's a great one.
Yeah, and even though the art looks like it's for kids, it's still pretty adorable looking too, which I enjoy. And that is my number 99.
My number 99 is Libertalia, and specifically Libertalia, The Winds of Galecrest, which is the newer version from Stonemaier Games. And this was a huge surprise for me. This is one that we were actually sent a review copy of. I don't know if I would have picked it up otherwise, and it knocked my socks off. I really like it, and I thought it was going to be a multiplayer only game, like a 4 to 6 player game, like the original mostly is. But the 2-player variant is super, super solid. The new artwork's great, and you get the same cards. You get the same cards every turn. Depending on what you play, that might switch in later rounds, but you know what your opponent has. So everything, you've got kind of perfect knowledge of what's going on, and you're just making your best choice to try and be a better pirate and steal all of that sweet, sweet booty.
It is interesting because at 2 players, you can really try and keep track of what the other player has played. Whereas at more players, it becomes more difficult to remember exactly what everyone has played. So it does work great at 2, even though it's a little bit different. What is interesting is that it has the 2 sides of the board, the sunny side and the stormy side. So you can play a slightly friendlier version or a little bit of a meaner version.
Yeah, it's super versatile, and we did play it at 6 too, and it's really fun at 6 as well. And that is my 99.
My number 98 is Role Player. And I really like the premise of Role Player, that you are building up the stats of a D&D character. So you're not going on some big adventure. You're just trying to get those numbers exactly where you want your character to be. And you do this by drafting dice and then using different dice manipulations as you place them to have all the various characteristics and traits all match up perfectly. And you can never get it exactly right. So there is a little bit of that decision of, ooh, I'll let this one slide because I want to really get this one going. And you can draft equipment, and there's various opportunities to be able to manipulate things a little bit more. But it's just an interesting puzzle.
Yeah, it surprised me because I haven't really played D&D, so I didn't really have a framework for this game. And it's solid. It's nice, and you're building out your stats. You've got your dexterity and charisma and whatever else, and that card drafting and adding the armor and building your character. You really feel like you're building a character. And with that expansion too, you actually get to fight some stuff with the monsters and minions ones. I think that is an expansion that really makes the game for me.
Yeah, the expansion really does add a lot, and it is fun to build up your pile of dead monsters that you fought along the way. And that is my number 98.
My number 98 is Space Station Phoenix, and I am pretty positive this is only on my list. I think you like it okay.
I do like it.
This is definitely a much more me game. But what this is it's kind of an engine building game where you are building out a space station, and you've only got so many bits to do it with. And you're building out the space station, and then you're populating the space station with all different kinds of aliens. And you're trying to get majority of different aliens, and you're aiming towards different bits as you build your space station. But the interesting thing is you've got these action cards, and to build the space station, you kind of have to tear apart your action cards because those get you precious steel that you use to build the space station. So as you build it, you have fewer and fewer actions, which is fine because you kind of get rid of the weak ones. and you can always use your opponent's actions as well, which is a fun bit of interaction. And it's really cool. It's like the production is a little kind of old school Euro. Some would call it clunky. I think it's charming. But I think it's got that kind of old school Euro acquired taste to it. And I think the game does a bit too, but I love those sorts of games. And this one has really been a hit for me.
I do like the engine you're building. So each income round you get more and more, but your actions reduce and get smaller and smaller. I would be very interested to play this at more than 2 players. Because I think I get really focused on the diplomacy track where whoever's leading there gets a bonus. And so for 2, it really is like the 2 of us really going strong for that. Whereas at more, I think you would only pick a couple tracks to try and lead. And I think that might make it interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, it would give more places to take actions from, so you could tear apart your space station really fast and steal everyone else's actions. I wonder how that would work as well. So maybe we'll play it with more. But for now, that is my 98.
My 97 is Trekking Through History. And I'm a sucker for really good production. And this looks lovely. It has a neoprene mat. It has the beautiful cards of historical events. And it's a really light, well, it's a family weight game, I would say. So it's very approachable. But there's enough interesting decisions because on your turn, you have to decide what card you want to add to your timeline. And so you always are trying to go in the future of time. You can never go back or else you start a new journey. But you're also adding tokens to your journal, and the card is also going to cost you time to go forward. So that's enough decision making that it does feel like you are making decisions. But I like how interesting those decisions are. I like being able to go back to Rome and then work my way up to Tesla and decide when those big jumps of time are going to be worth it or not.
Yeah, this is one of the best new gateway games, I'd say, in the last couple of years for sure. And this one surprises me every time I play it. It didn't make my list, but and usually Jess suggests that we play it, but every time we play it, I'm like, oh yeah, I do really like this. It's a solid gateway game with more decisions than you'd expect.
And there are a couple of our favorites that we're just suckers for. You always go for Tesla no matter what, and I always go for Jane Goodall whenever she comes out. But it looks lovely, it's really approachable, and that is my number 97.
My number 97, I almost didn't put it on the list this year, but I can't not put this on a list. It is the classic Survive, and it blows my mind. This game came out in 1986, and it's still good. If this came out this year, it would still be good. What it is, if you haven't played it, you just got a bunch of meeples. You're on an island, which is kind of meant to be Atlantis, and you got to get off that island into boats onto other islands before you fall into the sea, and then get eaten by sharks and sea creatures and all sorts of stuff. Whales are trying to smash your boats, and it's just this like super mean, just super simple, kind of a worker movement. It's not really worker placement. You're just trying to move them. And at the end of each turn, you get to roll that dice and like try and eat the other people with sharks. What could be more cutthroat than that? I don't get tired of this game. I love it.
What makes it really interesting is the meeples have different values on their bottom. And so you know what they are when you put them out, but you can't look at them again. So there are those times when you're pretty sure maybe you got your 6-1 to the island, but you actually didn't remember it correctly at all. And it turns out you decide to sacrifice your 1 in a boat because you were in a boat there, and that was your 6. And so it's always a surprise at the end about who made it back. And I mean, everyone's being equally mean, that your feelings can't get too hurt.
No, when the whole point is to be mean, and when it's such a quick, like silly game, it's just fun the whole time. So that is my 97.
My 96 is Books of Time. So this is relatively new to us. We got a copy to review at the UK Games Expo, and it is just a really interesting action selection game where you have 3 different books, and those books have various pages with the actions that you can do, and you are getting new pages and you're adding them in. So finding that combinations of what pages to draft, to be able to put in and to get into your book at the right time, and to set up your future turns, whilst also having the chronicle that might give you a special action that will maybe work really well at that time or not be quite what you were hoping for. It's really in an efficiency puzzle with what you have available. And there's usually enough available that you can pull off usually a couple turns where you feel really clever because you managed to do all of this and then that led to this other big thing as well.
Yeah, it's a solid solo game too. I think it was a little new to me, which is why it's not on there yet, but I could definitely see this breaking my top 100 as well next year, because I like it. It's that action, the book, like doing the books, that mechanic is just so clever, and yeah, it plays well. Really solid game at 2 players too.
And the binders, it's just so much fun to pop open those binders and have them close. It works really well, and that is my number 96.
My number 96 is Calico. And Calico, I think the thing I love about Calico is it's impossible. I like that you just have to let go. That like you are never going to be able to do everything because you've got to put out quilts and you want those to be in sets of 3 so that you get these little buttons and you want to get sets of buttons. But also you have 3 different, very close to each other scoring goals that you need for the patterns. And those patterns are almost certainly going to conflict. There's always a way that you could possibly pull it off perfectly if you got exactly the tiles. You won't, you never will. And I like that about it. I like that people just have to let go and be okay with just kind of failing forward. It's great that way, and it looks beautiful, and it's got cats, and I like cats.
Because you didn't mention the third thing that you can do too, which is the patterns for the cats on top of all of that. Yep. So there is a little bit of like, oh, if I put this here, I can get that cat, but that means I'm giving up on this scoring piece in the center. So there is always things you have to give up, and it's about which ones you do. So I don't know, it's still somewhat relaxing though, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Some folks don't think so, but I find it really chill, and I like it a lot. And that is my 96.
My 95 is Batoku. And this is one I feel like I'm more hesitant to say yes to playing. And I think part of it is just there's a lot to set up and it looks a bit overwhelming. But we've played it so many times and we're so familiar with it. Once you start playing, it really isn't that complicated. And it's really interesting with the dice that you have and the cards that you're playing because it combines the card play and then the dice movement really well. And having a shared board, there's often the race that we're doing for those action spots with our dice to try and get those out as quickly as possible and trying to get the right actions for the values. I guess when I'm explaining it, there actually is a lot going on because you do have to have the dice have certain values to be able to do stronger actions. And in the same time, you still want to make sure you're drafting cards. But the whole system, each piece, I think is a simpler piece that works together really well.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on, but there's only like 2 or 3 actions really that you have to choose from, and usually there's only so many spaces on the board. Even though it looks like there's a lot of spaces, most of that stuff's just stuff you're picking up. You can't really go there. So there's only going to be maybe 5-ish spaces and like 2 or 3 actions that you have a choice of, which is still a few, but it honestly gets a lot less underwhelming. So I guess a lot more whelming as you play it more and more. Yeah, I love it. I love the art in this too. The art is fantastic.
It does look really lovely, and everything you're collecting fits together so well. And I love getting the spirit track at the end and trying to go along there too. Mm-hmm. And that is my number 95.
My number 95 is one that's really new to us, but it has been out for a couple of years, and that is Hallertau, which is the newest to us Uwe Rosenberg game. And it knocked my socks off the first time I played it. I feel like his most abstracted farming game. So it uses a lot of the stuff you would be very familiar with, where you're collecting sheep, you're planting crops, you're building up crops, you're kind of feeding people. But in this one, that feeding part is kind of like the whole game. It's not so much like a chore you have to do. It's that you've got all this stuff, and then at the end of each round, you're kind of giving it all to the village. So you're giving them stuff like you've got yarn and you've got ham and you've got all different kinds of grains, and they want a whole bunch of it. And as you do, you move this house over, which I assume is kind of like the village getting better and stronger as it moves along. But the whole game is kind of really just smushed down into an abstract version of what Uwe always does, and it's fascinating to me. It feels like if Ultimate Railroads was smushed together with Agricola, like what that would feel like. And I think right now it's only this low because we've only played it like 4 times so far, and I think after a few more plays and I get more of a feel of it, it's just going to move up and up.
It is really interesting building up your resources to do that big payoff at the end to move your community center. And along the way, you're also getting cards, which we've realized that some of those, basically we've got to the point where we can get the house all the way to the end. So it is going to be those cards that will make the difference. And so having to not only get enough for that, but the cards does mean really having to try and plan it all out. And it gets harder to pay things off the later rounds you go. So that decision of when to advance things can be tough.
Yeah, and I don't know how I forgot about the card, because the cards are like the whole game. The cards, it feels a little bit like in Feast for Odin, the card system there, but way more so. And you're playing 2 or 3 a turn usually, at least. So you really, having that card system and getting those to give you extra stuff too, is great. So it's an interesting, slightly different take for Uwe Rosenberg, and I would highly recommend it. And that is my 95.
My number 94 is Strike. And this is a game that we did not think we would like. And then it's the first time we played it ever since. We love it. If you're not familiar with Strike, you have these dice that represent gladiators and you're throwing them into this ring. And anytime there's a match, you get to collect the matching dice. And you're hoping to end up with the most dice at the end. So really simple. But it's so much fun. There's something about it. Games are so quick. You always want to play again. There is that push your luck because you can always keep rolling and see if you can maybe get a match. That is a little bit addictive, that if you go out and you lose all your dice, you immediately want a rematch. Mm-hmm. So I think we've played this like 60 times or something.
It's our most played game. I think we're approaching 100 plays from when I last looked. And it's because we play it like 7-8 times every time we play it. And you can play this game 8 times in 16 minutes. Like, it's so fast. But yeah, it shouldn't be this much fun, but it's so fun.
And it's one that you can easily introduce to people who are new to games, which is great. And it's my number 94.
My number 94 is a slightly new twist on a classic, and that is King Domino, but King Domino Origins. And King Domino it's one of my favorite gateway games. It's just a great take on dominoes. You've got dominoes, you put them out. You want them to match in the kinds of land. You get points for how big the land is, plus like these little crowns that are in it. But King Domino Origins has exactly that game, but adds a couple more layers, which I think it's really nice because it gives people kind of room to grow into it as well, because this is such a game for new gamers. And so it's got all of these like little cavemen that you're putting out, and it's got resources that you're putting out like mammoths and whatnot. It's all kind of a Neanderthal version of King Domino, and it's not super heavy even when you have everything, but it does add a little bit that I didn't know I was missing from King Domino until we had it. And now that we have it, this is the only version that I ever want to play.
Absolutely, because like you said, with the Origins, you can play it just like the base game. Mm-hmm. But you also have the option of adding layers, and the prehistoric theme is great.
Yeah, it's a lot of games use it. I'm not tired of it. I really like it. And that is my 94.
My 93 is Creature Comforts. And I love the art and I love the theme that you are spending your time trying to get these comforts. So it's all like quilts and hot chocolate and sleds, and it's really delightful. And how you're doing that is there are always these shared dice that get rolled with certain values, and then you roll your personal dice, and you have to try and decide what action spaces you might get to before you know what the results are. So there's a little bit of like, oh, I think I'll be able to get this, but I'm not too sure, but I'm going to try for it. And usually you're able, even if you can't get that one, you get a token that helps you out in the end. And so you are collecting resources and you're trading those resources in for delightful items. And it's lovely. We play at 2, mm-hmm. and I think it works really well at 2 because it takes a person a little while to kind of work through all their actions.
Yeah, and this was the first for this publisher. Previously, I believe they'd really focused on kids games, and this was kind of their jump up, and it feels like such a perfect jump up because it still has that theme, but it adds enough. Like, it adds more meat than you would expect from this publisher. And yeah, and the theme, so it's just so cozy. It's everything about it is so cozy.
It is really delightful, and that is why it made my list, and it is my number 93.
My number 93 is one of my favorite themes, and that is cowboys, and it is Colt Express. And Colt Express is just, it's madness. You're playing cards, you're programming cards. So you're playing all of your cards for the round, and everyone is, and you're putting them in a big pile. And then you're flipping them over and then playing those out one by one. Some of those cards are hidden. I, for one, cannot remember anything for more than 15 seconds, so basically all of it is a surprise to me, and it just ends up being mayhem, and you're punching each other, and gold's going all over the place, and you're shooting the wrong people. And we always play this two-player variant that I don't think is even the official variant, where we each do 3 of them. Yeah. We put in all of their cards. They have this different way of doing it, but we just do it like we're playing all 3 characters. And they're all kind of playing for themselves, but then at the end, we add all their money together. And boy, do we end up shooting ourselves a lot. It just gets so crazy. It's so wacky, and it's so fun that way.
Because we don't have it where we don't say, like, you have to play as individuals. We do allow ourselves to try and play as a team, but it's impossible because you will be like, oh, great, I'm going to punch the other person, and it turns out they've left. And so you're punching your other teammate. You're like, oh, no. And so you really are shooting yourself in the foot. So I think it is meant to be a little bit more of a party game, but we've had a great time.
We've made it even more. It's a 2-person party, and it's great. And that is my number 93, Colt Express.
My number 92 is Wayfarers of the South Tigris, and this is Shem Phillips' latest game in a new trilogy, and it is an interesting tableau builder. So you are putting out different landscapes and different types of cards, as well as some space cards that will be a big part of your scoring portion. And along the way, you have to fill certain conditions to progress along their journal track. So there is very limited / like no interaction really, but that doesn't bother us. We do like the kind of multiplayer solitaire. So it is a very heads down, try to plan it out. I think one of the trickies for us though is you can end up with like 14 cards along the road, so it just ends up being tricky to like move it along, but it looks lovely, and I do like that puzzle of figuring out what I need and looking at the journal track to figure out what I can get coming up and how to make everything achievable with all the different symbols.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that holds me up is like you basically need, if you've seen the first Michael Keaton Batman, the table he first sits down with Vicky Vale at, you need that table to play all of the cards. There's bits I really like I like the space stuff. I like a lot of it. It's very abstracted. Yeah. I couldn't tell you what the theme was, but that's not a big problem for me, but it's got such an interesting engine, and it's got a lot of just interesting, different new ideas. I'm interested to see what happens with his newer one we haven't played yet as well, Scholars. I don't think that's out yet.
Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing what Scholars is about. But 92 is Wayfarers of the South Tigris.
My number 92 is Hadara. And Hadara is kind of a super abstracted kind of civ building game, and it's just this super abstracted kind of card drafting, kind of tableau building, but it does all of these in a slightly clever, slightly different way. And so you're drafting these 5 different kinds of cards, and you're taking turns doing each one, and they're built into like military, agriculture, culture, some other things, purple and green. And you're getting those cards and you're adding them to your tableau, but each time you add one, all the future cards of that color are going to cost 1 less. So it kind of makes you want to specialize, but one of the best ways to get points is to get all of the kinds and get these bonuses that are going to give you points if you have for like the rows across of all the different kinds. So you need your engine to kind of do both things at the same time, and you're visiting islands and you're building culture and all this other stuff. And it's only 3 rounds, and it feels like a real condensed, packed in, tight game within those 3 rounds. It always plays a little different, even for that simple system.
And you always want to do everything, really, because you never have enough money to get all of the cards. But every card, you're like, oh, this could be useful, because you do want to get your military high to be able to go to the islands, or you want to get your blue high to get the bonus, or you need your green high to be able to have enough cards, or you always want your money high. So it's so tough to be like, oh, I really want this card, but I'm going to save my money for the next color.
Yeah, because if you give back the card, you get some coins, and you kind of have to pass up on like half or at least a third of the cards every round. And every time you do, it comes back to like, oh, I should have bought that card. That would have made life so much easier, which is a sign of a good game. And that is my number 92.
My number 91 is Nemesis. So Nemesis is a big cooperative game, or semi-co-op depending on how you play it, alien-themed game. And we were watching the Alien series not too long ago, and I think that plays into it, because you do get a bit of the sense, for sure, of the theme as you're exploring this ship and revealing rooms and making noise and attracting aliens that are all different sizes. And I don't think I'd ever want to play it where we are like actively working against each other. I do like that we do the cooperative version only, because it's hard enough, really. I think it's been like very rare that we've flat out won when we're doing it cooperatively.
We almost never win, and we've only got the base game. We've played the base game a lot of times, and I know you can get all these other kinds of aliens that I think just make it harder. I feel like I don't think I could deal with that. But yeah, just the base game is so much in that, and it's great.
Yeah, it is really fun, and the different characters that you can choose definitely have their various strengths. I think we have a perfect combo that we like, that we tend to win better with, but it's been fun branching out and trying to win with the others as well. And that is my number 91.
My number 91 is the only one that actually crossed over in this whole section. This is not a direct crossover, so don't get excited, but mine is Strike. And all the same things that you said. It was such a huge shock to us when we played this at AirCon, and we've played it so many times, and we've sold friends on buy it. Like, friends have come over and played this and bought a copy like on their way home. This is one that every time, I think, anytime anyone plays this game, they're gonna want it, because it's just so fast, it's so easy, it's super cheap, it's super small. I feel like I'm just a Strike salesman now, but you know what? I am. You should buy Strike. It's great. And it's just so simple.
And we have the Harry Potter version, and I really like the special effects that get set off with the matches. It adds a little extra layer, which is nice.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different versions too. I think the original, we would have bought the original, but I can't find it. If I could ever find it, I would buy it. It's a little bouncier. It's Colosseum, and I like that bounciness because they just fly out of there. I think we perfected like special like throws and stuff too. This is one you find those little bits that you do, like you've got little weird house rules because weird things come up in such a simple game. But that is my 91.
And that is it. That takes us from 100 all the way through to 91. And we've only had the one crossover so far.
I'm shocked by that. It's a lot more fun not knowing at all what is on your list. And I'm really interested to see. I'm doubting myself now because I said we were going to have 4 perfect crossovers. But I'm just interested to see how many crossovers we have in each section. I would have definitely guessed we would have more than one in this first top 10. So it's going to be interesting to see if we've continued to have more and more diversified tastes as it's gone on.
And we will find out as we continue through the top 100. But please do subscribe. Let us know in the comments if you've played any of these games and if you like these games. And thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we will see you next time for another game.